Three, two, one.
Let's rock.
You're a strange animal, that's what I know.
We're spreading Gowanism wherever we can.
You're a strange animal, I got to follow.
Hi, everybody. It's Gowan here.
High fashion model magazines, runways of ageless beauty queens.
Let's rock.
For another 1,000 days, will it all be over? And another 1,000 nights.
Hi, Ken.
Hello, sir.
How you doing?
I'm fantastic. How are you?
Never better.
Welcome back to Let's Rock.
Great to be back on Let's Rock in another hotel room on another day in another year.
I believe you're in Biloxi right now, right?
How did you know?
I checked your schedule.
Correct. Yes. Yeah, we're down in Mississippi, where the alligators grow so mean. Yeah.
Yeah, you got a show tonight.
Yeah, we do. Tonight and tomorrow night. And yeah, we got a lot cooking.
Where are you tomorrow?
Here again. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
two shows in Biloxi.
two nights. Yes, yeah, two sold out nights, and it's a nonstop ticket selling machine with sticks this year, that's for sure. And then after this will be our break between now and the summer tour. But then next week I do 6 Gowan shows in a row, 2 of which will be in Ottawa.
That's right. That's right. Yes, I'm going to the Sunday show.
Oh, great. Okay, the 20th. That's good.
The 20th. I believe the other one is sold out as well.
I'm hearing good things.
Fantastic.
And then last week, for the last no, I guess 2 weeks now. Yeah, for the last 2 weeks we played 3 Gowan shows in Peru, and then one in Edmonton for that we got to join a Cirque du Soleil troupe for a fundraiser called Spirit of Water, which was great. It was with the Cree tribe in Edmonton at the River Cree. So yes, it's been a zigzagging all over the Western Hemisphere in this little juncture.
Have you played South America before?
Only Aruba, if that counts, and that was great, but that was about 15 years ago. So this was my first time really south of the equator, quite honestly, and what a phenomenal experience. We went up Machu Picchu, and it was great. We were there with a whole travel group of Canadians called the Great Canadian Kitchen Party, which was the name of the group, and it was just fabulous. Yeah,
Oh, that's awesome. Congratulations. That's cool playing down there.
it really was. It really was. Yeah.
Now, before we get into all the solo stuff, there's a couple things I wanted to mention about sticks.
Yeah.
First of all, again, I want to thank you for something. I took my daughter to the last show in Montreal.
Oh,
It
good.
was her first stick show.
At Place Belle, right?
That's right, in Laval.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
And you brought her to tears.
Oh no.
And
Was it that
well,
bad?
no, good tears. Good tears. I
Cheers.
promise.
Okay. All right. Good.
She was absolutely blown away by everything about the show. And when you were playing your key dive solo at the end, you actually brought her to tears. So
Oh wow.
I wanted to pass that along to you.
Does she play the piano?
She does. She does. She hasn't played for a while, but she grew up playing the piano. So
Well,
I've told her,
that's great. It's not an uncommon, believe it or not, that is not an uncommon reaction from people that, particularly from people that weren't even born when the biggest records of the classic rock era came out. We do see a very emotional kind of outburst. I saw one in Edmonton, as well, right in front of the stage, and it's very gratifying to see that music still reaches people on such a profound level as to bring them to an extreme emotional response like that. So yeah, that I think is a great sign for the future.
so a quick question before we get into the solo stuff. Rumor has it there's a new Styx album in the can. I know you can't talk about it too much because I talked with Todd Zuckerman a couple weeks ago
Yeah.
and he said we're
Yeah.
not going to say much. But what I do want to know is You've been in the band for what, 30 years almost now?
26.
26.
I'll be going into year 27 in a few days. Yeah.
And as of 2017, you released two albums. One of them was a cover album. And in the last 7 or 8 years, you've put out three.
Yes. So
Where did
in the
it
first
come from? This
So
creative.
let me give you a quick overview of that. We put our first studio album we put out together was in 2003. I think we might have put out a live record just before that. I could be wrong. I could be right. But there was a live, I think it was a double CD album that just preceded us putting out Cyclorama in late 2003, I think it was, or early 2003. Anyway, then we did the Big Bang Theory long before there was a TV show called that, by the way. But long after, long after Albert Einstein coined the phrase. So who copied who? That Big Bang Theory was a great little era because we got to do songs that we really were influenced by growing up. And from there, we did, it became kind of live records, the live symphony record that we did with a contemporary youth orchestra, uh, a few singles, etc. But really, during this whole period, Ken, the music industry was really grappling with where it was going, what it was going to do, because the big majors had major problems, right? Because of the internet and the effect that it had on the entire music world. I'm trying not to say music industry, but I'll say it anyway because it was an industry up until that happened, and then it became a business, kind of
Right.
downsized. And I, you know, on the one hand, I was still cheering for them, but we realized playing live is the one thing that you cannot download. It's the one thing that'll keep the band alive. And that's what we did. We basically put our efforts entirely into playing 100 plus shows a year. And then by 2010, I started doing Gowan shows again. So that was on top of that because I realized if this music is going to stay alive, now that there's classic rock radio, etc., I have to be part of supporting that and keeping it, getting it in front of people as much as possible. But then good things started to happen again as the ship began to kind of right itself of the music business in the recording side of things, because the major labels and other labels had found ways to work with the internet and to utilize it to a great degree to reach people again and be part of that, and that by 2014, yeah, that's when we started thinking, oh, that's what it was. Universal Records came back into the life of Styx, and they had the catalog, and it suddenly became more logical, basically, to start doing some of the new music that we'd been working on all along anyway, because we always had new things, and we just needed to find the opportune time to release them. And at the same time, Tommy had begun working with a fellow by the name of Will Ivankovich, who's been now in the band for over 5 years plus probably. And Will became our producer and co-writer. And that was a great thing to have someone that was kind of in and outside the band at the same time and had a great kind of objective perspective on the overall thing that we should be recording, what the band should sound like now after, we were coming up to our 45th or over 40 years of age at that point, and the life of the band. And that's when the mission began to kind of come together. And when Universal Records heard it, they were like, this is exactly what we were hoping you would do, is do something that sounded like it was right out of the classic rock era. We found a way to make the records sound like that because we used all the old gear again. We basically used all the old analog stuff and recorded in that clunky old way where we put these things down, and said, okay, forget that those exist. It's five of us in a room and let's make it happen. And that was such a great experience that it led to us playing several shows where we played the mission in its entirety. NASA got involved in it. They did a video with one of the songs. I guarantee probably the most expensive video of all time because it featured them, them sending the rover to Mars. And so I defy anyone to beat a $300 trillion video. I'm just pulling numbers out of the air,
Yeah, I figured that.
like Dr. Evil. And so, so uh, that led to us doing Crash of the Crown. The only big hiccup there was 2020, that where the world had to kind of reassess for a year. And but Crash of the Crown came out and went to number one on the Billboard Rock Album chart. They have a chart just for rock albums now, and because everything's so designated into its own category. And from there, they said, we can't wait for your next record. Well, the next record is on its way, and I've said an awful lot about the fact that I can't say much about the new record.
I
But
think
that's an overview of the recording side of the band over the last 26 years. And I have just to my right here, I can't show you, but you have to take my word for it. I have 1,000 CD covers that we have to sign this weekend. I might be closing in on about 300 at this point, but that's the entire band are signing them for the first 1,000 copies that will be coming out, believe, in May. And I've also been working on a video for the first single with a wonderful guy in Toronto named Jay Zebarth, who's doing some pretty magnificent things.
sometime in May. How exciting is this?
Was that the longest answer you've ever received to a question of, so how's the recording?
Well, yeah. And man, oh man, I loved Cyclorama.
Thank you.
You should
I'm
play
sorry.
some songs from Cyclorama at the shows.
We did for the first 15 years that that record was out. Thank that puts a smile on my face because I think there are some really strong songs on that record. And another thing I take a certain distant pride in is that as a young fellow that I met when he was maybe only 10 or 11 years old, and his parents were very much into Styx, and he came out to a show, and I met him because he was playing. He sent a video of himself playing piano, but he had his dad make him a spinning stand like mine.
Nice.
And so that caught my eye, of course. And I met him and I could see he was very talented. Well, with some distant encouragement over the years, he's now the keyboard player in Toto. His name's Dennis Atlas. Yeah, he's great. And when they asked him in a recent interview, I saw someone sent it to me. They asked him, name your top five albums of all time. The first one he mentioned was Styx Cyclorama. And the reason being was that that's the record that inspired him to want to get into playing music seriously and playing progressive rock. Because that record, to my mind, there's a lot of progressive rock on there, but it's progressive rock in the Styx fashion, where it's still very accessible to people that just listen to any other types of music. It's not all that challenging in as progressive rock goes, but it does have progressive leanings, and he still champions that album as you just mentioned it now too. So but as I said, that puts a smile on my face.
Yeah, it's a great record, and it's kind of been forgotten in the Styx catalog for some reason. And
Yeah, well, yes, and the album. Let's talk about that for a second. The cover of that record was done by Storm Thorgerson. Storm Thorgerson and my friend Dimo Safari shot the whole thing. Great Canadian German legendary photographer, and Storm Thorgerson is the guy that did all the Pink Floyd album covers. So it was such a great, unique image, this giant carrot with these kind of businessmen holding little bunnies behind their backs as if, they can't see the great possibilities that are right in front of them because they're being blocked by evil doers.
yes, the business.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, great album. I loved it. And speaking of great albums,
Yeah.
happy 40th anniversary to Strange Animal.
Well, that's the big news as far as be outside of Styx right now.
Absolutely.
It's funny when I've played the shows and I announce that this is the 40th anniversary of Strange Animal, the jaws drop in the audience. Yeah, and I have to remind them, yeah, you're that old.
Yeah, at Shankman, I felt really old. Yeah,
Yeah, but honestly, it's this is the great thing. The fact that it's 40 years on and people, still embrace those songs as if they're brand new. And as I say, on any given night, I can't remember at Shankman, but on any given night, up to half the audience can be under 40 years of age. So they weren't born when that record came out. And that's pretty astounding that they've responded to it, that there's still some airplay because of classic rock radio. And the great thing about the internet is if they hear one song or hear the name or something, they can do their own investigating immediately and go, oh, there's a lot here that I really like, which leads to a lot of younger people having their favorite songs not be one of the singles that came out, at the time that the radio would inundate people with, but they discovered on them by themselves, and they have a more unique connection to it, especially since it's not of their lifetime. Well,
Right.
not they weren't around when it came out. Let me put it that way. It is of their lifetime. They listen to it as if it's concurrent, like we listen to music from years ago and still relate to it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Now this show in Ottawa on the 20th will be my I went like 50 years with never seen you live as a solo artist. Now it's my third show in about a year and a half. Uh, but
That's
also
You were holding out for the good stuff.
exactly. But
Right.
also it's my third show with a different drummer. You've got Sukerman coming with you on this one. The first
Yes.
time I saw you was with
Yes.
your son Dylan. The
Yep.
second time, I hope I say this right, Sekou Lumumba.
That's right. Sekou Lumumba. Here's the issue. Because I tour so much with Styx, we're still close to 100 shows a year. We did 90 something last year. And the challenge is this: the musicians that I have in my solo band are great players, and they're in high demand. So when I suddenly sporadically get, oh, here's a grouping of shows. Well, as it turned out, Sekou's doing stuff with Big Wreck in this period. Uh, Dylan, my son, plays in a band called Seven Spires, who toured in Japan and Europe, and he's off to Europe again. And so I couldn't get him. So, oh dear, I had to go with the guy from Styx, who's only probably in the top five drummers on planet Earth, being Todd. And Todd jumped at it because he's the first person that played on the Gowan shows when we started doing them again 15 years ago. Uh, Todd played with us for the first few years, and then when Dylan was, had a few years of being a professional under his belt and had played, around the world actually. I said to Todd, I want Dylan to take a crack at this, and he's done great. But oh my God, what a fantastic problem to have when I have three drummers of that level. And Sekou, by the way, he slayed it, and that was just three shows, but he jumped in so completely into those shows that we did in February because he said, "Look, I was a kid when this music came out, and I always wanted to play it." And man, did he play it well. So I'm in an extremely fortunate position. But when people see Todd next week, you'll see just the the finesse and the style and the depth of his musicality is kind of, it's hard to find a parallel.
It's frightening. He's that good.
He
Yeah.
is that
But
good.
here, I asked him this week. I was very fortunate to talk to him because he doesn't do very many interviews. But
No, he doesn't. At
uh,
least with me and Tommy and JY.
I led it off by saying basically I want to talk to you about the Gowan shows. So he was in on that. That was why I got him.
Good.
But
Yeah.
one of the questions I asked him was, uh, do you, as the leader of the band, just let them do what they want, or do you say you got to follow the record pretty closely? The drummers you're using.
Ah, okay. Well, the drummer that played on most of the Gowan records is Jerry Marotta, and Jerry is the drummer from well, probably most known as the drummer from Peter Gabriel, but he's played in other huge things as well, Hall and Oates and the Indigo Girls and a number of things. But Jerry's style is so unique, and it's part of the fabric of how those records sounded from the 80s particularly. And he produced one. He produced You Can Call Me Larry in 1993. And luckily, I have those three drummers that I have, Todd, Dylan, and Sekou, um, they all love Jerry. They love the way he plays. They love what he put in, how he approached the songs. So and yet they each have their own unique approach to it. It's amazing to see with a musician, when someone takes something that they want to play almost note for note, their own personality still emerges. It comes forward because you can't help it. It's like me singing Styx songs before I was part of the band, those legendary songs that they have. I can I sing the same melodies and the same lyrics and play more or less the same notes, but they come out with my own personality, no matter how hard I might even want to try to mask that. There's no masking it. It just comes forward. It's part of you have a certain DNA that comes through in music. But as the leader of the band, okay, that being me, okay, in this case, um, yeah, we try to stick as close to the record as we can because here's why. In the 90s, in the 80s, we were very faithful to the record when it first came out, right? Wanted to basically replicate the record as much as possible. And part of my reason for that, believe it or not, was one of the greatest bands the first band I ever saw was the Guess Who. And they played their records where they sounded just like this is in the 70s. They sounded exactly like the record, only slightly better. I don't know how they did that, but it was like it's the record, only better. And they always were my kind of, from that point on, I would look at live bands and see how well can you do that? How well can you replicate the album and yet still give me the live, you know, rush that I want to feel? I'm quoting one of the bands behind you there.
Yes.
They're a band that did that extremely well. But Yes did it, and Genesis did it, and to such a degree that I was blown away with it. So in the 80s, we were very faithful to that sound. However, in the 90s, all the musical tastes had shifted pretty dramatically because of grunge and because of the unplugged phenomenon. And so what I decided, what a lot of musicians decided was, an 80s sound had become very kind of old hat, almost the way that the 1950s sound had become old in the 60s. And so we played the songs a lot. I guess I would say looser, but more like we kind of jammed a little bit on them every single night, and that was exciting to do, but it kind of took away that experience where you want to be close to the album and yet feel the live energy. So when we came back in 2010, by then the sound of the 80s was like highly venerated, and now it's kind of it's laughable sometimes when I'll hear it ends up being a new band on the radio that sounds so 80s that I go, did I miss this song like in 1982 or three? Has that happened to you, Ken?
All the time.
I remember when I first discovered, for example, The Weeknd. I think, guy's great. But when I first heard, I think it was Starboy, I thought, did I miss this song? And then when I heard, no, this is new, I thought, he's taken out the best bits of the 80s and made really cool lyrics and great delivery. But it's obvious now that people really are gravitating to that sound again, the way that we want to hear Styx sound as much as they can from the 70s. And so these eras of music have stood the test of time. So to answer your question, we stay as faithfully to the record as we possibly can. Yeah.
However, having said that,
Yeah.
when I was at the last show and Sekou was playing The Criminal Mind,
Yes.
oh my God, he took over the song.
Yeah. Yeah. Powerful. Yeah.
Very, very powerful.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Very, very. Yeah. Again, there's where his personality came through. He's playing more or less almost identical to what's on the record. There might only be a 5% variance. And and yet, yeah, I could feel it. I could feel that God, he laid into that heavy.
oh,
Yeah.
and I'm sure Todd will do the same next week.
Oh, you'll get the same experience, but with the Zuckerman magic on it, which is amazing. Yeah.
Exactly. By the way, I'm always intrigued by how artists pick their set list. Your set list was very similar to the time before in Ottawa, but
Yep.
have you ever started a show with a Criminal Mind? I think that would be a fantastic opener.
Only Okay, so only on award shows and things like that. Only on television shows have we done something like that. I think Sticks. I think we did a show in Quebec. I think it was called La Voix, where I think we played a Criminal Mind first. I could be wrong. Um, Great idea. The only thing is, it's always kind of you're trying to build a show to a crescendo, and in order to do that, I like to come out and play a couple of recognizable hits right off the bat, so that people are like, "Oh yeah, okay, this is we're in that mood." And A Criminal Mind, it might be too much to ask of an audience right off the bat. It might be in a live concert setting, in that it's um I mean, the song itself is dark. It has people's memories. It's dripping with memory, and often in the very beginning of a concert, the audience is trying to settle in, so they need that might be too much, too high a hurdle to present right off the bat. But a good suggestion, put it in the suggestion box, Ken. And does it may or maybe this is just coming from a place of you just want to get home early, get that song out of the way, and get in your car and head home.
Beat the traffic. Yeah, it got to beat the traffic.
Yeah,
No,
I'm the same way. If I go to a hockey game, yeah, I mean, I shouldn't say this. I know you're in the Ottawa area, but yeah, if I had a home team, and let's say that home team was from Toronto,
we're not going to have a fight, are we?
I like them. Well, no, we got enough fights in our hands at the moment.
No kidding.
Yeah, no, no, I'd like them to score 3 goals in the first 5 minutes, but then of course they'd figure out a way to lose anyway.
Yeah, good
Or
point.
they used to. They used to. Apparently, they're really doing great this year. I'm looking forward to the playoffs.
Oh, by the way,
Yeah.
Todd mentioned that one of the biggest cultural things that you brought from Canada to Sticks was hockey and
Oh yes.
teaching him about
Yeah.
hockey.
Well, here, yeah, I shouldn't have to when the guy the band was from Chicago, other than Tommy at that point, and Glenn being from New Jersey. But and John Panozzo, the first drummer in Styx, the guy that led up to Todd up until from 72 to 96. John Panozzo was a goalie, and in fact, he actually did a few like workouts with NHL teams. Chuck told me he did a practice once with the Detroit Red Wings, which is pretty astounding. So he would have been a guy that would have definitely championed that. No, what happened there, Ken, is that when the playoffs start on the bus or the buses, we have satellite TV, and as a Canadian is probably prone to do, you commandeer the television and you demand that we're watching this. Okay, no matter, I don't care if Murder She Wrote is on or not.
All the shows you could have picked, you picked Murder, She Wrote, really?
I was going to say Golden Girls.
Oh God. Um,
But yeah, no, they've become heavy into it. I mean, we got a couple of guys that are from the deep south who have become major hockey fans, like tape the games and want to watch replays and all kinds of stuff. So yeah, that's the cultural exchange I've brought to the band. That and a good healthy dose of maple syrup and other Canadian cliches that I happen to be very proud of.
Tim Hortons.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, do you know that on Facebook you have a fan page?
I am aware that there are a few. Yeah, yes. What about
There's
it?
one,
What
there's
are they
one
up to?
called, there's one called the Lawrence Gowan fan page. So
Yeah.
what I did was, because we've talked so many times and I've asked all the stupid questions, I thought I would ask them if they had any questions they wanted to ask you.
Oh, that's
So
great. I'd
uh,
love to hear from
I
you.
got I got three or four questions from them. The
Go
first one
ahead.
from, and I don't know how to pronounce these names. I'm hoping I'm doing it right.
That's okay.
Moscow or Moscow, Ken Moscow or Ken Moscow, not
In
sure.
Moscow. Okay. I've seen that
He
name.
wants
Yeah.
to know if you would ever, or if you're planning or would consider to do any more solo piano shows, just you.
I did one in 2013, I believe it was, at the Glen Gould Theatre in Toronto. Sorry, but I hate these notification things. Glen Gould Theatre in Toronto, where I kind of reprised the solo piano show I did in 1996, I think it was, at the Glenn Gould Theater. Um, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I certainly would. I mean, I love we did a series of shows, I think about five, where it was just Dylan and I a couple of years ago, just a two-man show, and that was really great. I mean, I like performing either solo, now the duo. This show we just did for Cirque du Soleil and for the Spirit of Water was a trio, and that was myself, Terry, my brother, who's in Styx now, and Dylan, and that was just last weekend. So, and I've done shows with string quartets, I've done shows with orchestra, and then I love doing full band because that's where we can replicate the records faithfully. But yes, and in fact, the Gowan Au Quebec album that we put out in '97. I printed up a few thousand of those on vinyl, and yeah, people seem to love vinyl again, and that's a completely solo record. That yeah, I can understand. It's an exciting thing. It's kind of a tour de force when it's a one man show. So yes, I would. Thanks for and thank Ken, the other Ken Moscow for that question.
Right on. And he also had one more, and I'm
Yeah.
just gonna read this straight up. I understand your next solo album is complete, but you're waiting for an extended Styx break before releasing so you can support it. Any timing, any chance of releasing just a teaser track?
There's a chance of releasing a teaser track, but even that would take a break from Styx. If Styx decide to take, it would have to be a minimum of a 3 month break, but more like 6 months. It would make more sense. And as we were talking at the beginning of this, my fear and the producer that I did the record with, the fear is that if I'm just not distracted, that's the wrong word. If I'm too busy doing one project and that just suddenly comes out, the internet has this horrible um, uh, penchant for having things just get completely buried because people's attention spans are so, and mine included, are so have shortened to such a degree that things can go by and you miss them. I mean, there are things I missed from the last couple of years that I'm just catching up on that I wish I'd seen. You know, I just saw just only because I was on the plane. I saw the movie A Complete Unknown. I wanted to see that when it came out. I was at least a year ago, I guess. And this is what happens. And then luckily it was on the plane, and I kind of caught up with it. And what a tour de force performance that was by the Chalamet fella. And so that's my fear, is I don't want to just throw it out there and then have it kind of bubble along and then not really have the attention that I feel it deserves.
Right. Well, hopefully soon at some point.
Yeah.
Question from Irene Ursine or Ursin, not sure.
Okay.
Will you ever consider adding "I'll Be There in a Minute" or "Pigeon" to the Gowan shows? I've heard he includes them in his solo
Yeah.
no band just him
Yeah.
shows.
Yeah.
And for a follow-up question, did we ever determine the identity of Pigeon?
The identity, I think was probably a fixed identity at the time. But boy, you can move the lyrics of that song and apply them to various people, and without much problem. It's a pretty sardonic song. Yeah, that she's referring to the album "The Good Catches Up," and funny enough, I played "The Good Catches Up" in Peru. It was some people there requested that one, and yes, of course. But um, that this is a perfect example of someone that's gravitated towards songs that were not singles. Oh no, I'll Be There in a Minute was a single in Quebec. Um, so yeah, I mean, at some point that they'll make their way back into the set. That's basically what I can say. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. And one more from the fan page, Michelle Murray. I can pronounce this one.
Okay.
Is there any significance to your purple hair? I was obsessed with your purple hair in the 80s, and I love that you still have it, and it's back now. Just curious if there was a reason to the color. She's a big fan, and she has tickets to 4 shows this year already.
Wow. Well, that's great. If purple hair can get you to come to 4 shows, then I'm sticking with it.
Yeah,
No, the funny thing is, I'll tell you exactly where this kind of kicked into my life. My first album came out in 1982, and after 5 years in a very, very theatrical band where I looked all kinds of ways on stage in the late 70s, it was decided upon in the early 80s when I finally got a record deal that I kind of decided I want to kind of like not have any image other than just the musician that I am, and so I was kind of low key in that regard. Well, the album didn't do well, and commercially, but it was strong enough that they let me take another shot. And when I did Strange Animal, I thought, well, this record is crying out for, first of all, television exposure, right? And I'm speaking in a completely commercial sense here, and I thought I have to look the part more for these songs. I have to kind of, it's and the 80s kind of the colors were beginning to explode. I don't just mean in hair. I mean, as you saw, the clothing and that whole decade was about everything was to excess. And that's where I started. Did the extreme hairdo and basically just as an attention grabber. And I remember a few times I suddenly, see myself in the mirror and go, who's that? And believe it or not, in the 80s, I remember when we toured opening for Tears for Fears when we were in the United States, people would stop on the street and stare at you when I had the big purple lock or the red lock or the orange lock in the front of my hair. And I mean, they'd scrutinize it as if it was some freakish thing. Now you see every granny doing this, so it's not a big deal. But I still like it because it reminds me the moment I go on stage to do it, I'm connected to the whole arc of my career is connected just in a weird sense that way. I dropped it in the 90s as well, 93 on the You Can Call Me Larry record. And I kind of missed it. I just thought, no, I like there being some kind of colors there. I don't have tattoos on my face or anything like that. So that's just a little signature thing where people go, oh, that might be him.
There you go. Now we know.
Yeah.
So thank you to those people, Ken, Irene, and Michelle for those questions.
Michelle's question was the toughest. That was a
That
tough
is a
one.
pretty tough question. But you brought something up in the second question about playing these songs that you haven't maybe played for a while. I've
Yeah,
always wondered if I picked out a random song from any of your albums, could you play it right away?
that's a great question. I could hack my way through, but no, I have to relearn them. And I mean, really dig in to relearn them because you think you know them and you think you can, just toss it out there. And then if you happen to hear it back, you're like, yeah, that's just wrong. Right. So no, we have to rehearse. And right before we came on this call, as I was signing those CD covers, I was listening to City of the Angels from Strange Animal because we're going to attempt to play that next week. In fact, what we're going to attempt next week, by the way, I'll let people know now, is we're going to attempt the entire Strange Animal album,
No
top.
way, really?
Yeah, just as Styx are doing the Grand Illusion top to bottom this year, I wanted to try to. So there may be some fireworks in the first few shows. By fireworks, I mean train wrecks. But we shall see. But I have to relearn the song. In fact, look, that's me writing down the lyrics that open every stanza of the verse of City of the Angels because I have to get it around my palette again, not just musical palette, but be able to sing it and play it properly is basically what I'm trying to say, and not sloppy. So yeah, I could hack my way through, Ken, but it wouldn't be the performance that I would think you deserve.
So yelling out requests of like hidden tracks at the show on Sunday might not be a good idea.
Oh no, no, I love hearing people yell out requests as long as it happens to be the next song that we're playing, coincidentally.
Classic.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, I don't want to keep you forever. I do have my rapid fire coming up, quick answer,
Sure.
quick questions. But
Yep.
also, I wanted to talk on something. I don't know if we're allowed to talk about this yet, but I got an advanced copy of the Triumph tribute album.
I was just going to mention that because before I see you've got Rock and Roll Machine behind you there on the wall, right?
I
That's
do.
the album I'm
Yes.
looking at.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm looking at the wall behind you. I'm connected to every one of those acts there. Even the Van Halen poster. Eddie Van Halen tapped me on the shoulder one night in Los Angeles, and because we were all in a restaurant together, and I went up and had to play a couple of Christmas songs on the piano, and he came and sat down beside me. He says, hey man, you play really well. But Rush, under the same management for 14 years, and Alex played on the Lost Brotherhood album. Triumph I've known since the 70s, believe it or not. I used to go and see them. It's in the movie about the band, but I go and see them between sets in Toronto when we were playing in one club and they were a block away. Strange Animal, yes, I recognize that album cover. And of course, Kim Mitchell over here is the guitarist on my very first album. And I've had a great association with him for my life, really, since my 20s. I'm trying to see who that is down in the bottom. Who
That's
is
Steve
that?
Vai, actually.
Oh, Steve Vai. We
Yeah.
have no connection. So
I
that's
got my Elvis guitar.
very nice. I've been to Graceland now 4 times, and yes. But
And
you're the
okay.
Triumph album. That's
Yes.
great. So yeah, so
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 let me lead into this before you talk about it.
go right ahead.
You do Somebody's Out There,
That's
uh,
right.
vocals only,
Right.
right?
That's right. Yeah.
But this, before you answer, this is probably the best tribute album I've ever heard.
It's really strong, isn't it?
It's incredible. I mean,
Yeah.
there's some names on this. Nancy Wilson sings on it.
Yeah.
Envy of None with Alex and Andy
Yeah.
Curran.
Yeah.
Uh, Phil X is all over that.
Yes.
I talked to
Well,
him.
he was in the band too.
Well, yeah, he's fantastic. But everybody's on this album, and what I like about it is everyone, what we were talking about before, everyone puts their own DNA into it, and it sounds like it's not just a note for note cover of the actual Triumph songs.
No,
It's
no.
fantastic.
I mean, for my little assignment there, I mean, Rick has that super high voice and powerful delivery. So I felt like, well, I have to go after that as much as I can and go after it's a pretty soaring melody in that piece. And Mike Klink was the producer that put it together, and he did Guns N' Roses and phenomenal producer, and he produced Triumph way back when. And I'm glad you liked it. Did you like Somebody Out There?
Oh, well, first of all, that's my guilty pleasure Triumph song. I think it's a highly underrated
Yeah,
song. It kind of gets forgotten
yeah.
in the history of Triumph, but
That's kind of why I wanted to do that one. When they gave me a list of the ones they'd like me to try, that's why I wanted to do that one. Yeah,
it's a beautiful song, and your version is fantastic. So I think that's coming out in June, if I remember correctly.
yeah, yeah. I think
So
so. I think so.
it's just such an incredible thing. Talking about the pictures on the wall, the
Yeah,
amount of Canadian talent and music that's been around since probably Neil Young, Guess Who, up until
yeah,
now is just
yeah.
phenomenal. And I'm trying to focus so much of my show on Canadian talent.
Yeah, I mean, look, I always heard Joni Mitchell and Gordon Lightfoot growing up. Now I listen to them regularly. I just love it. Leonard Cohen, um, all the bands that we've mentioned today, the Canadian uh, voice in music is so profoundly strong. Um, Rush, the bands behind you there. The guys in Triumph, I'll just get back to that for a second. So dedicated to doing this right from the first time I met them. Mike Levine actually managed my band in the 70s for about 3 weeks. Then he got too busy with Triumph. And even in making this, well, when Triumph got their star on the Walk of Fame, I was honored to be asked to put together the band that played their. And you can look it up on YouTube if you want. It's the Canadian Walk of Fame Triumph, and we put together what I call the Rock Army, and we did a medley of I think three or four Triumph songs. And there's so much interesting music that's come out of Canada, stuff that I sit down sometimes in a hotel room like this and just try to play. I'll try to play some Rush stuff, or I'll try to play some Max Webster, or like I'll put it on and begin to dig into it, and I feel I feel it's odd to say this, but there is kind of a national. I don't know if it's patriotic. That doesn't make much sense, but unless it's Stompin' Tom Connors. But but there is a feeling of home that I get from the music that's come out of our country, and that's something that I think I value more and more.
Okay, let's do some rapid fire stuff.
Rapid fire. Pew, 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 pew.
I got three questions for you.
Wait.
Uh, Everyone knows in the States there's Mount Rushmore. I'm changing it to the Canadian version. It's going to be called Mount MoreRush. Uh,
That's
uh,
I don't see any opposition to that coming up at all. That's great.
no, and it's not really a Rush question, but it is a Canadian music question. Who would be on your Mount MoreRush of Canadian vocalists, since you are a vocalist? And I don't,
Canadian vocalists.
yeah,
Well, I I was initially inspired in the Canadian vocal world by Burton Cummings. I have to say his first concert I saw, I couldn't believe I remember they opened with Bus Rider, and I thought he sounds like I said before, he sounded exactly like the record, only better. I don't know how that you can do that, but so he would be. I'd put him at the top. But honestly, this is a really moving target for me to try to, I mean, I heard it. I heard a Rush song the other day where I thought Getty's vocal was like, that's one of the fantastic. Who else? Now I'm so into Joni Mitchell's voice, her delivery, beautiful. Um, yeah, Gordon Lightfoot, I'm suddenly really listening to the way that he, lets songs, the way he would form his words in songs. Oh man, this is way too hard. I
it's a
mean,
hard question.
I'll even go and say, there's and it's not the kind of music I play, but how are you going to beat Celine Dion for just a raw talent of I mean, she's considered one of maybe the greatest vocalist ever. She's in that echelon anyway, where you can actually debate that kind of thing. Um, uh, uh, uh,
The list goes on, right?
that's way too. That's going to be a hell of a mountain. Just don't carve it out of the Scarborough Bluffs because they erode too easily.
You
Yeah,
know
just
who you left off that I think doesn't get enough credit?
uh,
Uh,
dude,
Cass Jordan.
it
I
was
love Cass.
fantastic. Oh yeah, great. And I got to do just a weekend where she and I did a little bit of stuff together, and yeah, like she's you know the equivalent of great female or just great singers, and that's
Yeah.
I, honestly that question scares me because I want to keep going, and I know that I'm going to leave too many people off. So
Yeah.
uh,
Rick Emmett.
yeah,
There's that other guy,
Rick Emmett. I mean, God, there you go. Yeah,
and that other guy, Lawrence Gowan, should probably
right.
be up there. Let's just kiss ass when you got to kiss ass, right?
You might as well if you can get the purple hair into the mountain, then people will at least
Yeah,
keep it.
exactly. Um,
It's blue, by the way.
Hockey, yeah, it looks kind of purple with the light.
I know. Yeah, yeah,
Hockey question. You're from
yeah.
Toronto, I'm from Ottawa.
Yeah.
We're gonna play each other in the playoffs. Leafs are,
Wow.
well, they might play each other in the playoffs. Leafs are,
Okay.
who you picking?
That I've really enjoyed this conversation up until this point, Ken. I really have, and I find it like a low blow for you to suddenly put me on the spot like that. Here's how it is, okay? I grew up in Toronto, all right? By law, you have to be a Leaf fan. Even if you don't want to be, you have to be. That is blue. looks purple in some light, but it's actually blue. Um, no, oh God, here, I'm gonna politician my way out of this. I just want to see a great series.
Yeah, sure you do. 7 games, nobody gets hurt, and everybody has fun, right?
That's it. Everyone has a wonderful time.
Yeah,
But yes, I also want it to be extremely violent and nobody, and they all end up friends.
yeah,
That's,
that's gonna happen.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I want, but you know what? I will say this, just because of the temperature this year, I like the fact that it's Canadian teams playing Canadian teams because that gets our national fervor up where we can, we can, like I might actually, I might actually be on the other side of the fence from Ken Ventura for every game. And yet after it, when I see you in the audience, I could give you one of these.
Yeah, you are. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. Hockey's hockey. Doesn't matter, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It's a beauty. It's the
Um,
most beautiful game.
yeah, it is. One more question. Either Styx or Gowan, what's the hardest song you have to play for both singing and playing at the same time?
Really good one. Yeah. So for a Gowan show, let me quickly go through the set list here. Oh, there's Todd right now. Uh, asking me all kinds of questions about next week. Um, I I have to put a lot of focus into singing and playing a Criminal Mind. Okay, that's tough because there's an emotional kind of arc that I have to climb in that song as well as play it, not get overly excited where I, overshoot the mark, so to speak. Um, so there's definitely that. And I'm going to say, believe it or not, "Come Sail Away" for Styx is a trickier song than it would be than you would think just listening to it. It's deceptively simple, and you do have to keep your eye on the ball all the way through with that one. So those would be the two. And probably I picked the two biggest ones or relatively biggest ones, let's put it that way, because you know that there's a lot on the line when you're delivering those songs. Quite often, that's the song they came to hear, even if they didn't hear it first in the concert.
You're
But
picking that up, aren't you?
there's a certain responsibility, Ken, when you're on stage, you don't want to, you don't want people to be disappointed, and you don't want to disappoint yourself. So those are big kind of iconic pieces that need I gotta kind of get my head together to do them justice.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Good answer. Good answer. I always thought Lady might be a little harder to play and sing than Come Sail Away, but
Well, I only have to play piano on the front of that song, and then I tried to pick something where I have to play all the way through because when I get off the piano, then my focus comes. You just become the singing entertainer guy, and
right.
it's not that that's easier, but it takes some of the weight comes off your shoulders.
Absolutely. Okay, so show tonight and tomorrow in Biloxi.
Yeah,
Shows, I think you start on April 16th in Guelph, Ontario, right?
that's right. Let me think about that. What's today? 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Yeah, 15 would be Guelph. Yes, 15. And
Okay.
then St. Catharines, and then I think Huntsville, and then I think it's all Ontario. Yeah, Southern Ontario stuff. And I will mention that, it's a gathering of the strange animal flock, if you will, this year because November 29, we finished the year at Massey Hall in Toronto as a
Oh,
calendar. Yeah.
really? Yeah, I
Which
think I also saw you're coming to Gatineau as well later on, maybe in
yes. Yeah, we'll do that. There'll be a full Quebec run of probably 7 or 8 shows in November leading up to Massey Hall in Toronto, which will cap off the year.
who's
Yeah.
going to be the drummer in that one?
Who's gonna what?
Who's going to be the drummer in that?
We don't know yet. We're juggling. We're juggling to see who's available. Who knows?
Nice. So anyone who's listening to this or watching this and has not seen Gowan live, I don't think I've ever seen a band who has more fun on stage than these
We do.
five guys.
We
You
do.
guys are the emotion is palpable. It really
We,
is.
we we have a great time. That's the biggest similarity between the Gowan shows and Stick shows is really enjoy each other's performances. We just do, and that's part of the magic that it kind of just erupts on stage.
Always fantastic talking to you. Good
Bye,
luck. See
Ken.
you next week.
Good to see you. Bye now.
Thanks.
Ask one who's lonely if I'm really so